Hi everyone, welcome to episode 4 of Built from Scratch, the series where we, starting from nothing and going just a little bit at a time, a little tiny bit at a time, we are building up a universe. We are building up a universe of stars and planets. We are building up a spaceship that we can fly between these stars and planets with. We'll eventually be building up alien civilizations and everything in between so that we can do all sorts of awesome stuff with our starship, visiting all these cool places. We are, in short, making a video game. We are making a video game where you fly a starship around a cool universe and do all sorts of interesting, fun, wacky, who knows kinds of things. But at the moment, we are, we're pretty close to the beginning. We've gotten some cool progress. I'm really excited about the stuff we've done so far. But there's a lot to do. So we pretty much time to just jump right back in and start doing some code and start doing some clicking and some typing and just see what happens. Last time what we did was we fixed a couple of bugs involved that we had before. We fixed some bugs with where our things were being drawn on the screen and some bugs where our ship went too fast. I don't know if I really call either of those things bugs actually, because we knew exactly what they were. They weren't really unintended. They were features that hadn't been added yet, but I called them bugs anyway because episode 3 was called Fixing Some Bugs. I'm going to go in here and we're going to get started. We're going to make something new. I'm going to click See Inside. I'm going to go into my project, and you can do the same because all of these projects that I have, every project on this channel is shared on Scratch, and every project shared on Scratch is always automatically free and open source. So you are always 100% welcome to do whatever you want with it. And I really hope you do, because I think it would be really cool to see neat projects that people built off of this. So, first of all, what do? We need to make a copy. We need to go to File, Save as a Copy. We need to change the name from Episode 3 to Episode 4. And I said last time, we were going to spend the part of this episode cleaning up our code. And I think it turns out that was a bit of a lie. Because I thought about it, I gave it a little more thought, and I said to myself, well, I want to add this big, really big, cool, ambitious new feature where you can visit star systems. And that's going to take up pretty much the whole time. It's probably going to go long. It's going to be it's going to be more complicated than the stuff we've done so far. And so I didn't want to try to shoehorn cleaning up the code in here. I think the next time, we'll probably push that off till next. We'll see if we get this done just super fast and super awesome. Then maybe we'll clean up the code. But we're not going to start by doing that. I lied to you last time when I said we were. What we're going to start by doing is making it so we can visit stars, which actually, let's be honest, is like a million times more exciting than cleaning up our code and making it more readable. Although the cleaning it up part is going to end up being really important because we cannot add new features. At a certain point, we cannot add new features until we make our code better. But we haven't hit that point yet. So we are still in just plunging right into the vast abyss of unknown, clicking and dragging and making new code and adding new things, and it's going to be great. So, as I said, the thing that I want to add here is the ability to visit star systems. And what is that going to mean? That's going to be something really different. So I'm going to hit go, of course, on my program, and we can see all these stars populate. And what I want to do, I want to make it so that when you fly here, when I touch this star, I want all of the other stars to disappear. And then I'm going to want it so that my ship is flying around the screen, and the screen, there will be a star system represented on the screen somehow, right? So it's going to be like we're going to go to a closer level of zoom, and there will be some planets moving around, and we'll be able to visit the planets. We're not going to do all that yet. We're just going to get the infrastructure for going to a star and having everything change. But actually, this is a pretty big deal because everything is going to need to change, right? We're going to need to when we go to a star, a bunch of things are going to need to happen. We're going to need to hide all of the other stars. We're going to need to know which star we visited so we can display the information for that star. And we are going to change our navigation so that we are flying around the screen and our ship moves around the screen rather than having our camera follow us, because at least at first, our star systems will have it be constrained to one little screen here. So, wow, that's actually a lot of different things. So we're going to just get started with them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to a star, And we're going to need to know which star it is that we visited, right? So when we touch the star, we're going to need to know that we went to yellow star here, or we're going to need to know that we went to this little green star, and we're going to need to display that information accordingly. In order to do that, we're going to need some identifying feature for the stars, and that feature is going to be an ID number. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to data. I'm going to make a variable in my test star here, and I'm going to call it ID. And this is a thing that you will find that we do over and over and over again. Almost every time we make clones, we are going to care about individual properties of some of the clones. Well, not almost every time. A lot of times it won't matter. But many, many times, the individual properties of the clones will matter. We will care that we touch green star or purple star, or, this one has a star system and it has an alien spaceship and it has, it has a, what do you call the things that orbit planets? Like a star base, something like that. There'll be an alien star base, and we'll visit it, and we'll get our ship repaired or something. And it sounds great. But we need to know that it's the system that has the star base and not some other system. So how do we do that? We're going to need this ID. We're going to this identifying number, and we're going to need to make sure every star has a unique ID. So this is a really interesting thing. So when the flag is clicked, so I made this for this sprite only. And this is a kind of interesting and important point, and I'm going to say it just like 3 times in a row. When you make a variable for this sprite only, there is a different copy of that variable for each clone. Every clone has its own variable when you have a for this sprite variable. I call them local variables. Every clone has its own local variable. So we knew this before. We didn't really talk about it, but we used this property when we set the world X and the world Y for the clones, right? We set them for the clones here, and we didn't set them for the original, and that worked, right? Everything worked. So we didn't really need to talk about it, but it is important now because we're going to need this fact that everyone's unique. So I'm going to set ID to 0 here. The other thing that I want to talk about is that when you make a clone, when it says create clone of myself, when a sprite makes a clone of itself, that clone is an exact copy. What I mean is that every local variable that the clone has is going to have the same value that the sprite had when it made when it cloned itself. Its position is going to be the position when it cloned itself. Whether it is shown or hidden is going to be the same as whether it was shown or hidden when it cloned itself. So that means in order to make this kind of unique ID here, we just need to up the ID value of the original. So we're going to start the set ID to 0, and then every time after we make a clone, we will change ID by 1. And this means that the clones, they will start with an ID of 0 and they will go up to something, and then the original will always have its own ID, which is different from all the others. And I'm not sure that will ever matter, but it seems like a useful thing, so I'm sitting here and doing it anyway. So we're gonna make a bunch of IDs. Stars will have their own IDs, and then we're going to need to go ahead and we need to check when we run our spaceship into the star. So how are we going to do that? We're going to use if statements. That's what we do always whenever we're checking things, right? So I'm going to go in here into control. I'm going to go here and I'm going to say if, I'm going to say touching, and I'm going to say if touching the ship. And the reason, I'm going to rewind for a minute, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to say something also important. So there are 2 ways that we could check if our ship was touching the star, right? We could ask the ship whether it's touching the star, or we can ask the star whether it's touching the ship. It doesn't really matter a lot of the time, but in this particular case it does, because the ship will know that it's touching a star, but it won't have access to the information about which particular star it is touching, and that's just kind of how it works with clones. So if you are checking whether a clone is touching something, you're going to need to use the clone rather than the other thing. So the stars are all going to check if they're touching the player, and they're going to do some stuff. So the first thing they're going to do is they are going to tell the world about it. They're going to tell every other object in the game. If I'm touching the player ship, every other object in the game might need to know about it. So because all the other stars are going to need to hide, and the ship is going to need to do something, and who knows, right? Everything's going to be different. Everything's going to be crazy. So if touching player ship, I need to broadcast. That is the way that one sprite can tell all the other sprites about something. It's in events here, and I can broadcast message 1, but instead of broadcasting message 1, I'm going to broadcast entering star system, because that is a better name than message 1. And if it turns out we name all of our things message 1 and message 2 and message 3, our code will be a disaster and we will give up and go home. So we're going to broadcast entering star system. And so now the player ship can do something. It can listen for when that happens. It can say, when I receive entering star system, do something awesome. Do the right thing. But we don't know what the right thing is, because the right thing is going to need to know which star it was. And at the moment, the player ship will have no idea which star it gave the broadcast. So that's going to need to be, anytime we need communication between sprites, it's going to be in the form of a variable. So I'm going to make another variable, and this is going to be a variable for all sprites. And it's going to be entering star ID. So this is the ID of the star system that we are entering when we trigger the entering star system. So of course, we're going to set that. We're going to set entering star ID to my ID, right? Whatever ID was the ID of the star touching the player, we're going to set that this global variable. So now all of the objects in the game will know about it, and we're going to do some stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm just going to test that out. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go to looks. I'm going to say, I'm going to go to operators. I'm going to say join, because I'm going to have my star say something. It's going to say entering star ID colon, and then I'm just going to put that in here. So this way we can just go ahead and test it out. So I'm going to fly. I can fly to this red star, and now my ship says entering star ID 6. I can fly over to this purple star, and it says entering star ID 47. I'm going to go back to that red star, and if everything is wonderful, it will stay 6 again. And indeed it does, and then this one is still 47, and every star has its own unique ID. So that's great. This is working. We are successfully having our star tell our ship that something should happen. And that's pretty good. But it's not everything that needs to happen, because we don't just need this kind of communication. We actually need to change almost everything about our game when we are flying in a star system, right? Like the navigation is going to be different. What stars do is going to be different, right? These stars aren't going to exist. We're going to have planets instead. So almost everything about the game is going to be different when we are in a star system versus when we are flying around the universe. So in order to keep track of that, we're going to make another variable. It's also going to be a for all sprites variable, and I'm going to call it game mode. And basically, there's going to be a bunch of different game modes, and later on we'll have like, settings menu as a game mode, and start screen, and cut scene. Who knows, right? All of these things that are different kinds of things that might be happening. They will be different game modes, because what the game mode is going to do is it's going to treat almost everything in our game differently, and we need a mechanism for that, right? Like flying around the star system is going to feel completely different. It's basically like making a different game that's embedded. So we're going to have this game mode thing. So first of all, and this game mode is just going to be a label that we make up. So I'm going to set game mode, and when the flag is clicked, I'm going to set game mode to Interstellar. And I'm going to make it all capital letters because I like capital letters for game modes. No reason otherwise. Then, when I receive entering star system, I'm going to set game mode to solar. So that way, when it's interstellar, we will fly. That's when we're flying around the universe, the galaxy, and when it's solar, that's when we're flying in a solar system. These might get better names later, but I think those names are actually just fine. So what's going to be different versus interstellar and solar? Well, something's going to be different in the player ship, and something's going to be different in the star. So let's start with the player. As I said, when we are in solar mode, I want our starship to actually fly around everywhere, right? I want to be able to see the movement. The camera isn't going to follow the ship anymore. The camera is going to zoom out and the ship is going to move around the screen. So in that case, we no longer want to be changing our world X and our world Y when we are moving. We're going to want to be changing just our straight up screen X and screen Y, or what Scratch calls X position and Y position. So we're going to need to check which game mode we're in, and we're going to need to do the right thing. So we're going to go down here. We're going to say if, we're going to grab an if else, and we're going to say if game mode equals Interstellar, just keep on doing this, right? If game mode equals Interstellar, change world X and world Y, else we're going to grab another if else, and we're just going to make a long chain of if else's here. We're going to say if game mode equals Interstellar, do this. We're going to say if game mode equals Solar, do something else, and the something else is going to be changing our X position and our Y position. So change X by, change Y by, and I can duplicate that, velocity X, change X by velocity X, change Y by velocity Y. And if game mode is neither Interstellar nor Solar, we're just going to go ahead and say invalid game mode, because we want to know, right? If this should never happen. We should never be in a game mode that isn't something we've defined. And so if it is, we want to know. And so we're going to use this say block to tell us. So I'm just going to go ahead and test that. This is not going to do all the right things, of course. But I'm going to stop. I'm going to first move these things around. And you know what? Let's go and let's hide a lot of these variables, right? We want entering star ID. We want game mode. I don't care about max speed. I'll leave those up there, world X and world Y for the player. I don't want star count. I don't want ID. I don't want game mode. And there we go. So these are all the things I think I care about right now, and I only barely care about them. I actually don't care at all about the camera thing. The only reason I care about the player's world X and world Y is to make sure it doesn't change when we're flying around. So I'm going to hit go, and we should get some planets, and as they slowly start to appear, and then I can fly over here, and entering star ID 58, and now I am in this mode where I fly freely about the screen. And that's great. That's a lot of what I wanted out of my life right now. So I'm going to hit stop. Of course, I want to, first of all, I want all these other planets to hide, right? The fact that this green planet is still there is a problem. And I want to be able to leave this somehow. So I'm going to hit stop. And then I'm going to think about how it is that we're going to make the planets hide. So that's going to be in the stars. I keep switching between saying stars and planets. When there are actual planets, hopefully I won't do that, because that would actually be confusing. Right now, it just makes me sound kind of ridiculous. So I want the stars that aren't the one that we are visiting to hide, and otherwise I want them to show. And I want that to be the case only when our game mode is in solar. So here we go. Almost all of this stuff in this loop right now is going to be for solar. So I'm going to grab an if, and I'm going to make the same basic thing. I'm going to say if game mode equals solar, and that's going to be data over here. If game mode equals solar, do that. We're going to do exactly the same thing we did before with the if else's and the invalid game mode. We're going to duplicate that. We're going to say if game mode equals Interstellar. And then if it's not either of them, we will say invalid game mode. Invalid game mode. Because we just want to know. If game mode is ever the wrong thing, we just want to know. If game mode equals Interstellar, we are going to figure out which things should be showing and which should be hiding. So how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to use another if statement, because I'm going to say if my ID is equal to entering star ID, right? If I am the star that is being entered, I'm going to want to show, and otherwise I'm going to want to hide. So I just said otherwise, which means I definitely want an if else, which wasn't when I grabbed. So I'll put that if back and put an if else in here. And we're going to say if entering star ID equals ID. So if the star, I'm a star, I'm a star, and if I'm the star that you're visiting, then I should be visible. If I'm not the star you're visiting, I should hide and go away, and you shouldn't see me until I am flying around the universe again, or until you're flying around the universe again. I am a star. I just sit there in one place. So if entering star ID, if the ID of the star that the player is entering is my ID, the ID of my special star self, then I am the special star and I get to show. Otherwise, I am not the special star and I have to hide. So let's just go ahead and test that one out. Let's hit go and start flying around, find ourselves a good star, and something terrible is happening. What's happening? I don't even really know. Let's go ahead and see what's happening. If game mode equals solar, let's see what game mode is. Game mode is Interstellar, and that's good. Oh, I did this backwards, right? I said let's do all of these things if we are in... I said draw all the stars and the star map and stuff if we are in solar mode, but this is not correct. I do all these things if we're in interstellar mode. I do this if we're in solar mode. What a fool I am. All right, hit go, and there we go. There, and then entering star ID, all the stars disappear, and I'm flying around, and that's fantastic. So I'm gonna hit stop, and there's one more thing I wanna do, because once I'm in the star system, I'm gonna fly around in it, but I do wanna be able to leave. I wanna be able to leave and go back to exploring the universe. And I'm going to do that when I hit the edge of the screen. So I'm going to go to player ship here. And I'm going to do some testing. If I'm in solar mode, I am going to check if I hit the edge of the screen. And if I hit the edge of the screen, I will go back to interstellar mode. So let's make it happen. If statement, control, if. If game mode equals solar, I'm going to change my X and my Y. And then I am going to check if I am touching, not the mouse pointer, I'm going to check if I'm touching edge, because conveniently that's the built-in scratch function. If touching edge, what am I going to do? I'm just going to go ahead and set game mode back to interstellar. Set game mode to interstellar. I'm going to hit go. I'm going to get some flying. I'm going to go here. Now I am in green star world, and then I'm going to go back there. And now I have left the star, but then you see that I am now on the edge of the screen, and that is not what I really want to do. I need to make sure I go back to 0, 0 for the camera to follow me around again. And so let's do it. Let's go to motion, and let's just say go to 0, 0. And there we go. And so now I'm going to go there, and I'm going to go there. I'm going to leave. Oh, and we're going to have to do some fixing, right? So this is a bit of a problem because I switch game mode, and then I try to get out of this star, but I am stuck in it because I very briefly flash to the star system. Before swapping back, and so that's a little bit of a problem. So I'm going to set game mode to interstellar. Maybe I'm not gonna. Well, let's see. I'm just gonna have us go to somewhere offset for a minute. I'm going to go to 30, 0, which is really not the right solution to this problem, but that's just a bug to fix later. I just want to be able to test and make sure. Yep. So now I can enter and I can leave, and that is pretty great. I can go up here. Oh, yeah, it's still a little bit tricky, right? So what if I just go ahead and I set my position to something even bigger? I'm going to set it to like 60, 60. This is going to be completely silly, but now I'm here and I can leave. And now I can go back to there. Yep, so that's a bug to fix. We're going to need to make sure we can go in and out of star systems. We're going to add some effects, some nice visual effects to make that look cooler. And we are going to do the long-promised cleanup of the code because it is starting to get a little bit hard to follow with all of these long chains of things. So we're going to use some interesting tools to get the code cleaned up. But that was pretty great. We have done basically everything we set out to do, and maybe even more excitingly, we have some really clear things that we want to do next time. So until next time, I am Will. This is Built from Scratch. You should feel free to check out my projects. Look at my page, Built from Scratch with underscores. Look at the Scratch page. Do anything you want with the code. Remix it, build it into anything awesome. If you have any questions, suggestions, ideas, or if you just do something really cool and you want me to know about it, please, please, please send me a message on Scratch. I would love to hear from you. Other than that, episode 4, well, what are we going to call it? We're going to call it Visiting Star Systems. Visiting Star Systems, I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go to my stuff here. I'm going to see project page. And I'm going to click share. And I'm done. I'll see you next time.